Hello, and welcome to The Invisible Men. My name is Ian Rowe.
Hi, Ian. I'm Nike Fajors.
Nike, great to see you as always. As you know, and as our listeners know, we are always trying to highlight some amazing men, particularly Black men, who are just doing great work. And today we have the benefit of two very interesting provocateurs, trailblazers, and innovators. We are joined by Benyam Capel and Sean Hampton. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, so I'll do the quick intros because there's a film out now called Am I a Racist, which the two of you have been integrally involved in. So we'll have a great opportunity to talk about the film, the people in it, and what the film actually represents in America today. So Sean Hampton, Sean has been a producer, a film producer for 15 years in film and television and Hollywood. He teamed up with Matt Walsh, who we'll talk about, in 2019. And Sean was one of the producers of What is a Woman, another incredible film, and Am I a Racist? And now he's the creator and executive producer, congratulations, of Judged by Matt Walsh, streaming now on Daily Wire Plus. So congratulations, Sean. Can't wait to dig in with you a little bit more. And Benyam Capel, fascinating man, born in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, and yet raised in rural Colorado. Benyam was adopted into a family of 14, but somehow caught the political bug at a young age after studying political science at the University of Colorado in Colorado Springs. He spent nearly a decade in politics on Capitol Hill, working on presidential races, which again, I can't wait to dive into. And you also one of the producers of Am I a Racist? And some may recognize you from the film itself, particularly some of your interactions with Robin DiAngelo, and also this guy who was standing with you on the Washington Monument. It was very funny. Matt Walsh, like, does he not exist? So Sean and Benyam, either order. First, before we dive into the films, just tell us a little bit about yourself. Just, where you're from. Benyam, we heard a little bit of it, but tell us a little bit about your background, and also for each of you, when was it that you realized race was a thing that you had to deal with?
Benyam, I'll let you take that one first.
Okay. Well, as you mentioned, I was adopted and I'm the youngest of a family of 14. So I grew up in a biracial family where half of my siblings were white and half of us were Black. So it was always a thing. It was, that always existed in the concept of, well, hey, I don't have to put on sunscreen and Corey does. But it was never an issue. It was never combative and never talked about in a way that mattered because we were all Capels at the end of the day. We were all brothers and sisters and we could all just survive. And then you step outside the home at a certain point and you see stories on the news and you're being asked to read books in schools and have conversations, or, as simple as when you're in 8th grade in a white majority school and you become the subject matter expert on issues like slavery or the civil rights movement. You're like, hey man, I'm reading the same thing Johnny is. If we could just, so yeah, it wasn't really an issue in my family until we had to kind of be showed by the media and the pervasive culture, and they had to tell us that it was an issue.
Right. And Sean, how about you?
Well, for me, I'm born and raised in a small southern town named Ocala, Florida. That's where I'm from originally. And so growing up there, I mean, it's of course different now, but at the time, there's Confederate flags everywhere and just all over Florida, of course, that was an issue. But as Benyam said, for me, race was something you know about. I mean, a 5-year-old understands that there's Black people, white people, that's just easy to see. But understanding the dynamics, I can remember when that happened for me. And that was in 1991 when I was 10 years old and the Rodney King incident happened. And so it became instantly this just immediately everything exploded. You had the Rodney King situation, you had the LA riots that happened as a result of that. And then just the 90s itself. I mean, this isn't a moment necessarily in race relations, but in 1992, Spike Lee, my second favorite film of his, Malcolm X, came out. So he did this masterful job with that film of showing Malcolm X and just the strength that he had at that time in history. And my parents were big in the civil rights movement, so it was something for them. It was this moment to kind of reflect on their history. So just the entire 90s was kind of my baptism into race. Like I said, you had Rodney King, then you had the persecution of Michael Jackson that started right after that. Then you had the O.J. Simpson incident right after that. So there was just this one after the other. There was a new racial firestorm every year, and
Yep.
so it just became an issue. That was as I said, my baptism.
Wow, our Nike and I, our origin story for this video podcast is related to the Rodney King. Do you remember at the time? Do you remember buying into? So here you were 10 years old. You're seeing videos of a black man being beaten by these police officers. Police officers get acquitted. Did you buy into it? Did you say, "Wow, my race does matter, and it matters in the negative for me"? Was that enthralling for you?
That was, my family is interesting because they taught me that there were, realities that had to be dealt with because of being black. And as I said, this is coming from a family where my father had the Klan burn crosses with an S on his front lawn at different times. His life was threatened regularly because of his involvement with civil rights in our area. So, his perspective on what people are capable of is what he communicated to me. But I was never taught that I'm a victim because of those things. I was more prepared for the reality that you might have to do something, you might have to work harder, you might have to study more to prove your standing, but never let them take away the fact that you did earn it. Never take away the fact that you did all the work it takes to get where you are. So that's kind of what he taught me, was that my shield against oppression was going to be my preparation, my education and experience.
Wow, wow. And Benjamin, before I know Nike wants to jump in, being born in Ethiopia, I don't know how often you've been back. Did that shift anything for you in terms of your perspective on race as you were growing up?
It did because I think I grew up with an innate sense of gratitude to be here. Ethiopia is not a country I'd recommend for your next spring break location. If you guys are, shopping around for tickets right now, don't get me wrong, it's a beautiful country with rich history and lovely people. But the corruption in the Horn of Africa has just made it an unlivable place. That and the inter-ethnic strife that happens there. You'll have warring tribes. In fact, there was just a very bloody civil war a few years back, and there's still remnants of that happening today between people that look awfully similar to each other.
Mm.
So when it comes to ethnic struggles, especially in the United States of America, I can look back at my home country and realize that the fear of division and the risk of true sectarian violence that brings with it just reminds us to call ourselves to the highest possible standards of accepting each other as Americans and understanding that is the lens in which we need to survive in.
Well, brothers, it's so wonderful to have you on. It's the first time we've ever had two guests on at the same time, and so we're going to get double the treat in terms of, we really want answers from both of you as we ask questions. And my first question is, as a country, have we really confused prejudice and racism?
Sean, I'll let you take that one.
I that's a great way to put it. I think we have. I think that prejudice. Well, I think almost those, like you said, to me, those words have become synonyms. It's if I say you're prejudiced, I'm saying you're a racist. I'm just not using that word. You're correct, but prejudice is just a very legitimate definition of something we do every single day. I don't like Burger King over McDonald's. I'm prejudiced against Burger King. It doesn't mean I'm racist against Burger King. So I would say yes.
Yeah, it seems like and then the label of racist, it's become, you can replace that with prejudice. I teach at a couple of universities in America, and 2 semesters ago, I had an incident in my class where one person called another person a racist. And I said to a faculty head, I said, using that kind of language is almost calling someone a rapist. If you don't have proof, those, but the left in particular has been so emboldened to throw that language around. I think making that distinction between prejudice and racism is one thing, but that word, it's almost like the N word. It should really be used very sparingly.
Well, I think you made a point there, and one of the things the left has done masterfully is take away individual ownership when it comes to racism. It's not that individuals are racist; it's that you are participating in a system that is racist. Therefore, you cannot absolve yourself, and and you should not even be personally offended when I call you racist. It's just part of the reality. It would be the same person saying that I'm wearing blue jeans right now. So to that point, absolutely, because those things are by definition a charge towards an individual, unless you were to actually be talking about certain racist systems that we've done a pretty phenomenal job of eliminating in this country, and generally speaking in the Western world.
Right. Well, as we'll soon talk about, you can also be on your own journey to understand your racism, right? But you can never escape it. Right? You can never escape it. And I want to talk about the film, but Sean, there was one thing that I wanted to also ask you about. There used to be this show, America's Most Wanted, when most of our viewers probably watched it, where the host would describe some criminal activity, and this person's a fugitive still trying to be found, and so there's a reenactment. And what happened? So actors were hired to reenact these crimes, but oftentimes people saw the actors in real life and said, "Oh my God, that's the person from America's Most Wanted," and they apprehended the actor. And so, my understanding is that you had a similar kind of, on your journey towards becoming a successful producer.
Yeah, it's funny. That was about 20 years ago now. When I started in the business, acting, and so at that time, brand new into it, and there was a television show called Dr. G Medical Examiner, and this is basically, like you said, like an America's Most Wanted type show where they would go over crimes, and the medical examiner would talk about what happened and how they knew what really happened. So I was hired to play a police officer, and one of the production assistants went to a local CVS or Walgreens type store, and they asked them to make a badge out of my headshot and a template of a police badge. So the employee at the store took both of them, made copies, and then came back and said to the production assistant, "I can't do this for you." And then the police told me later that instead of explaining why the person wanted this done, they said, "Well, fine, if you don't do it, someone else will." And they walked out. So then the employee called the police, and this tied into an investigation, a tri-county investigation that they were doing, because there was someone that was running around in an old police car actively pulling people over. And so this incident happened in one of those counties, and they thought it was related to
Oh
that
my
crime.
gosh.
So this goes out across 3 counties. I had a cousin who worked with the sheriff's department who called me and said, "Hey, are you in trouble? Like, do you need to talk to me about something?" Because my headshot was sent around to say, "Hey, we need to locate this person and talk to them." And I have to give the police department credit. That it was the Orlando Police Department. They were actually very good, very professional. They knew almost right away what was going on. As the detective told me, he said, "We looked at your photo and we said, this isn't an ID photo. This is a headshot. This isn't the kind of picture someone would use." So they
Right.
kind of knew from the beginning, but that didn't stop the local news from running a story about it, asking everyone if they know me to call the police. And then they had to run a retraction for 3 days across all of the broadcasts. So I got a lot of good publicity out of it, I
Well,
guess.
actually, the fact that they ran a retraction is pretty good. Usually you hear about the headline, but never the pullback at the end.
Well, that was 20 years ago.
I was
They
gonna
probably
say.
wouldn't do it today.
Yeah.
Got
So,
it, got it. Okay, so let's fast forward when you guys are starting to, you're out of school, you're starting to think about your life impact. I mean, Benyam, you were actually working on some presidential races. Which races did you work on?
So that's one race plural. For a long time, I fought against the idea of working on presidential races just because I wanted to have as much impact as possible, and I viewed that for a long time of being involved in state and local races. Um, and then I got dragged kicking and screaming into the Trump 2020 race out in Michigan.
In Michigan.
um, yeah, yeah. So that was a pretty unique experience. There's only a limited amount I can say about my work on the campaign due to some ongoing BS that both the state of Michigan and some other government agencies have decided to harass us about. Um, but
Okay.
it was a pretty phenomenal opportunity again, just to kind of show how far we had moved forward. Here's Donald Trump, this avid and notorious racist, who has this young black guy working and dealing with I don't know, about 60 direct reports, who are pretty fantastic and educated people who flew in all around the country and from the administration to help out the campaign in the last few weeks and months. A few hundred lawyers that was working with and navigating all around the state to make sure that we had a successful election day, and then about 1,200 volunteers. So that's an awful lot of faith to put in a young black man for an avid racist. So there's some things that didn't quite square up for me right there.
Got it. Got it. Got it. Okay. And what brought you both into the film world? And then we'll get into the movies themselves.
Well, for me, getting into the film world, let's see, in 2005, when I was 24 years old, newly married, I moved to Los Angeles and pursued a career in acting. And when I got there, I learned very quickly that, there's not just a sign up sheet to go be an actor. You have to know everybody. You have to really have those connections. And so after a while, I said to myself, well, if I can learn how to make movies, then I can put myself in them. And that's another mistake in thinking, but it was a good mistake because I was able to get into producing that way and learn what filmmaking really is and how to do it and what goes into it and what's important and what's not. And that led me to finding out what I'm good at and what I really like doing. And so that's how I found my passion in producing, was just getting in and learning, making mistakes.
And then I kind of fell ass backward into it. Our brilliant director Justin Folk and I have known each other a long, long time, and him and I used to make political advertisings and campaign spots back in the day. And during that time, it was another spike in kind of the racial grift. That's when was it CRT was
Oh yeah.
the name of the game.
Hmm.
Um, so we would sit down and have drinks and discuss the need to make a film about kind of race and why this is all just so insane. And then I go off and I start working on a few more campaigns. He goes off and he makes this hit film, "What Is a Woman," with Mr. Hampton over there. And a few years later, he gives me a call and says, "Hey, you remember we were having a beer? I don't know, 6, 7 years ago. Uh, we're making that movie. Get on a flight. We're gonna go to our first shoot." So it wasn't necessarily a goal of mine, but it's the blessing and an honor of a life.
Yeah. Cool. And like, I know you want to come in, but let's just for a moment linger on "What Is a Woman." How did that movie end up doing? Just box office wise and all that. And what do you think the impact has been on the national dialogue on gender issues?
Well, how well it performed. I can quote one of the producers on that movie and tell you it made 30 times its original budget.
Brilliant.
Um, so it's and that was without a theatrical release. And that for me is a personal point of pride because for a long time, I've been in when I started producing, people called digital media new media, and so many times I would meet people, and they would say, "What is new media?" And they just didn't understand that it was digital entertainment, just things that didn't come from traditional broadcast outlets like your cable company. And for What Is a Woman to be released digitally and then have the impact that it has is, as I said, just personally fulfilling because for so many years people said, it's not viable. We can't have movies on the internet. Like, it's just going to be for bootlegging movies. It can't really be a source for entertainment like it is now. So that's a long way of saying I was right, and I'm glad of it. But as far as the impact it's had, I can tell you a quick story that ties into Am I Racist? We did screenings across the country for about 2 weeks a month ago or so, and we were going to different cities. Each of the producers, the whole team, would go to different cities and talk about the film and watch it with audiences. And I had a woman come up to me afterwards who said that she saw What is a Woman and she wanted to thank me because it helps her to save her career. She worked in the mental health field. And she said that, unintentionally, she was having difficulty sometimes with keeping up with people's pronouns. And it wasn't that she was making a stand. It's just this concept to her was foreign, and she didn't get it. She didn't have a political bend to her. And she said that she got brought up for review and almost lost her career in mental health, helping patients because she couldn't grasp this concept. But she saw What is a Woman, and that helped her to understand what was going on and to fight back. And this was, years ago now. And she said that she was able to save her career, and everything's fine now. But she directly said if it wasn't for that movie, she didn't feel that she would be equipped with the right state of mind and the right arguments. So to me, that's a great example of the impact.
The amazing thing about both films, What is a Woman or Am I a Racist, is that you're giving permission for people to talk about topics that have almost become taboo. You can't talk about race or you can't talk about gender because you're always feeling you're on eggshells, that you're going to be canceled or vilified for anything you've got to say. And in Am I a Racist, and we were going to show some clips right now.
We want to rename the George Washington Monument to the George Floyd Monument. Would you mind signing it? You will? What do you think about this issue of heteronormativity and how it intersects with the broader structures of racism in society? What's up with white people? What are you doing to decenter your whiteness?
Who's making it the center? Why are they doing that?
What you're doing is you're stretching out of your whiteness. This is more for you in this view.
White.
Folks.
White.
Trash. White supremacy.
White woman. White boy.
White.
Entitlement.
White.
Centering. White. Silence.
Is there a black person around here?
There's a black person right here. Does he not exist?
They gonna say I'm racist, but they call everybody racist.
You've got women paying to go to a dinner to be called racist, or you've got a young woman who was in a college dorm calling out white people for being in the dorm, and now she's getting paid thousands of dollars to provide counsel. So just step back and tell our audience, what was the impetus for the film? What drove you to do it? And then we'll get into it.
Benyam, you want to start and give your perspective?
Oh, sure. Well, at least my reason for wanting to be involved and being so excited to be brought onto the team was fairly simple, and it's that there's people out in this country who are trying to use lines as racial lines as to sow derision in a way that they couldn't in the early 20th century with class. It is a methodical and existential crisis towards the future of the United States that these hardcore left-wingers are trying to bring about the end, essentially, to the American experiment by getting us to hate each other in any way they can. And again, they failed with the class lines, because America isn't a country of have and have-nots. It's a country of have and haven't-yets. But they are able to take advantage of...
That's a great line.
I don't think I came up with that. I'm sure I read that on Twitter 4 years ago, so I wish I could take credit. But they are able to take advantage of real racial wounds in this country, and that's something our film wasn't trying to minimize at all. We weren't trying to say, well, racism has never existed. It's simply trying to point out that it is not amongst the top 20 or 30 issues facing this country right now, and we should all just take a breath and reevaluate kind of our perspective on what both the mainstream media and the political elite and higher education has been asking us to focus on.
And Sean, your take?
For me, the my answer kind of covers at least both of the films that I've done so far with Matt. The way that I look at it is we're not simply entertaining or informing, but we're forging a weapon. And this weapon, in the form of a film, is your playbook. Is your, here's what you're going to be hit with. Here's the truth. Here's how you frame the truth for them so they can understand what you're saying. We're helping people to fight back against those things because being phobic of something or being a racist or any of the other labels is the worst thing. And no one ever makes content telling you how to defend yourself against those claims and informing you what the truth is because, it's seemingly impossible. It's very difficult. Now I personally believe that we have accomplished that twice in this, but I'm not minimizing the incredible Herculean effort it took to make both of those projects. What is
And
a
I
Woman, of course, was the beginning, and that was a very not saying that it's just when it's your first movie like that, it's hard to get everyone behind you. And then after the first successful one, you would think the second one was so much easier, but it's not because the stakes are higher and the expectations are higher, and what you have to accomplish is bigger. So yeah, to me, it's forging a weapon.
I want to give some praise to Sean, Matt, and Justin for What Is a Woman, and its cultural and political impact in this country as well. When that film, when you guys started pre-production for that film, I think there was 2 or 3 states considering a ban on trans child mutilation or gender affirming care, to put it incorrectly. And I think we're at 28 states who have successfully passed legislation blocking or limiting the ability for people to transition their children. So this had a tangible effect on the culture. There's the old Andrew Breitbart quote that culture is downstream from politics, and I can't think of a film that is a better encapsulation of that than What Is a Woman, and hopefully we'll have similar success with Am I Racist?
Wow, that is amazing, amazing. And so, just what you just said, again, we'll linger for a moment on what is gender affirming care, trans child mutilation. For the people who believe in these things, what's their response to you? Because your focus is on children, right? Like, what's your response to them to say, look, we had to make this film because we had to protect children? Like, how do you deal with I imagine the significant blowback that you get from making films like this?
The most common thing you hear when it comes to kids is the argument that you hear in the film, which is, do you want a living daughter or a dead son? They go to that extreme of, well, this is going to happen, and that's the liberal playbook. It's the same with abortion. They want to say that abortions, they want to bring up rape and incest, which make up less than 1% of abortion, and yet that is their vanguard argument of why abortion should be legal. So with the trans issue, it's the same thing. They use children harming themselves as the reason why you should do this. And, that's a pretty easy argument. Anyone who's a parent, especially, or if you spend even 5 minutes around a child, you know that you don't indulge every whim they have. You know that your job is to guide them through life, not to chauffeur them through life. And so it's the same way. You don't let a child eat ice cream for every meal. You don't let a child get a tattoo when they're 6. You don't let a child get married when they're 8. There's many things we do in our society to protect children because we understand that they don't have the ability to make proper decisions. And in this case, where you're talking about a permanent decision that involves surgery on a child, to say that, well, they're going to threaten to kill themselves. Show me the situation where that's not a valid concern. Then, well, you don't give me my favorite cereal, I'm just going to hurt myself. It's, so we don't bend to every will of a child.
Wow.
As I thought about your film and some of the participants in it, who represented this philosophy that we're so concerned about, I thought back to Sacha Baron Cohen in one of his skits where he was in Arizona and he was bringing economic development in the form of the world's largest mosque. And there's a scene there at one point where he's like, okay, I understand why you're upset. Let's talk about your favorite mosque. And like a couple of people are like, oh, my favorite mosque. And then I realized, of course, they hated mosque. But my question for you, gentlemen, is people in that audience, I think about them versus the people you interacted in your film. And part of me feels like a higher percentage of those people in Arizona are actually more recoverable than the folks you were dealing with. That, maybe 50% of the people in that room that said they hate Islam, they hate mosques, that actually 50% of them, over time, you could get them to take a more logical, appropriate view. But I'm not sure if 50% of the people that are in your film that have that mindset are recoverable. But I want to get your perspective on that.
Well, I agree with your point entirely. I've made a joke, but it's not really a joke. That to be as dumb as some of the people that we talk to in this film are, you really have to get a college education. So, prejudice to a certain extent is a natural part of the human condition, and it's something that we have to, as individuals and as a culture, battle against. So those people who are just kind of lost souls and have probably not ever interacted with a Muslim person in deep Arizona, it would probably take less work than you would assume it would take. In fact, I think of, is it Daryl Davis?
Oh, Daryl Davis, yes.
Daryl Davis, and his work dismantling the Klan, and he eliminated several KKK organizations by simply presenting them with an alternative view of a black man. These people aren't in a bubble. They're not. Well, they were certainly in a bubble, but they're not sheltered from black people. They see them and interact with them not as much as they probably proclaim to, but they live in urban areas. They go to quote unquote diverse schools. They believe it because it makes them feel important. Because they don't have a civil rights movement to march in. They've invented one they can participate in to simply make themselves feel important.
Wow. And as black producers for Am I a Racist, does that raise the stakes for you? Do you have is there a kind of special place in hell for you because you're black working on an issue like this?
I don't think so. And Sean, maybe you have a different perspective than I do. But we had amazing partners in this film, and we had amazing leadership in this film through Justin Folk and Matt Walsh being the talent and the powerhouse that he is. We all came into this with the same understanding and the same reality of kind of what race needs to mean in this country to be successful, and to frame it through that lens. I think me being an individual black person, I had slightly different motivations, possibly, and a slightly different perspective on kind of what white privilege meant to me. But I think the stakes for someone like Matt Walsh, I've been a Republican for a long time. I've worked in Republican politics for a long time. It's not been infrequent that I'll get called a coon or an Uncle Tom. It's just part of the business. The hatred and the vitriol that Matt gets is really on a different level, where he's had to have 24-hour armed security since What Is a Woman. So we talk about what's on the line. I'm talking about a few mean comments on the internet, and he's talking about his children's lives.
Wow.
Incredible.
And just to chime in on that, I can assure you that there's many activists who want both of our heads on a spike and say that not only is there a special place in hell, but we have reservations. So
Yeah.
I'm sure that and as an old saying goes, if you're going to go to hell, you might as well show up with some rank. So I guess that's what we've accomplished in some people's books. But I mean, to me, that's if you engage in, let's say that this is 100 years ago or 80 years ago, and you engage in fascist propaganda, and someone comes along and they make anti-fascist propaganda, not Antifa, but you know what I'm saying, it's truly something that goes against the message, then they're going to call you racist, as the song from our movie says. But we're, personally, I'm fighting against the victimization of the world, not just black people. These activists rely on you believing that you have no power, that you have no autonomy, that you have no accountability. And that, for me, is a big one that they're missing, because if you have accountability, then that means that most of their arguments go away. because their
Right.
arguments are based in the fact that it's not your fault, when truly 99% of it is. So, I mean,
Yeah.
they are going to hate us, but I don't personally share their beliefs, obviously.
Well, and to add to that, again, I mentioned the notion of white privilege, and that's obviously not helpful for white people, and it's demonizing and it's offensive, and just kind of silly. And certainly again not helpful. But it's detrimental to black people. To look at a young black kid and say, hey, the only way that you're going to be able to make it in this life is if you have white people get out of your way and lower themselves. Just is a fantastic way to destroy the perspective and the prosperity in any young black or young woman's or young blacker man or young black woman's life.
Yep. And do you think there's something called black privilege?
I think it really just depends on the circumstance. Yeah, certainly that exists. When Sean and I are shooting down in rural New Orleans, him and I have had a way easier time doing pre-scouting than some of our white producers. And
There
we'll
you
get
go.
welcomed into those spaces.
Right.
Now, there's certainly some other times in some other neighborhoods where
Yeah.
Sean and I stay in the car. But
Or don't even go.
yeah, exactly. That's just the nature of the world, and I
Yep.
think we can all be relatively comfortable with that.
Yep.
As
And
long
how
as,
about American privilege, regardless of race?
oh, certainly.
I want American privilege to be a real thing. I think it should be turned up. Like I want it where people know you're an American, and that means that you live in the best country on earth, and they're jealous and envious of you. Like that's to me what I want American privilege to be, because I do love our country, and I think all of our citizens are citizens of the greatest country that was ever created. And but yeah, I don't think we get enough American privilege. We do in the bad way, just in the same way. Just to go back and kind of answer your question about black privilege, I think that does exist in the same way we say white privilege exists. If you want to talk about some kind of generality about a group and what they can or can't do, sure, I can go on television and I can say that Caitlin Clark is getting attacked because of her race. A white person cannot necessarily say it the same way without being called and labeled a racist and
Mhm.
canceled.
That's a great
So you
point.
could say that is black privilege in a way, right? You could say that white privilege means that you don't have to worry about meeting your future in-laws and if they're going to reject you or not. You might, because if you're a jerk or whatever, but if you are a minority, there might be an instant reaction to you. So that might be what they call white privilege. It doesn't mean that one is better than the other. It just means there's instances where it favors you.
Right.
Wow, wow. So just a couple of scenes in the movie. So everyone's obsessed with how were you able to get inside these places, like the dining room of Sarah Roy. And you did a great when you displayed the amount of money that you gave to these people. That's worth the price of admission alone. You just realize how much money these folks are getting. But the concept of the dinner, here you have a room full of, I think it was primarily women, who were basically listening to these two women, one white and one black, telling them how racist they were or are. What do you think is the motivation for people like that to volunteer and are they happy at the end? Do you think that they feel that they've just been grifted, or they feel like it's
No.
been worth every dollar?
I think this is an extension of the new secular religion, and it's their version of confession or absolution. To go and get screamed at by some educated black and brown women is their only version to feel some semblance of relief from this weight that they put on themselves of white privilege, white fragility, and their version of original sin.
Yes, I think that, personally, it shows me that, or at least I want to believe, that these people are deep down good or positive people, because they've been told that they're doing something that's very oppressive, very wrong to other people, and they don't even know it. And so they might be a little gullible in the fact that they're going to fork over all this money to get called a racist. But I look at the effort. and I say that, that's somebody who's trying to be a better person. I can help you for a lot less, and it'll take a lot less time, you know. But you're going the long way to get there. But I look at their original motivation. So I do think that there are a lot of good people who are just simply being lied to, and they're believing it.
Hmm. Hmm. Were there any other scenes in the movie that are your favorites? I know obviously people are talking about Robin DiAngelo. Were there other scenes that you found particularly poignant? Like for example, I love the older black man who really broke
Milton.
things down in a simple way.
Yeah, so both those scenes, both Milton's scene, the entire sequence in Louisiana and in the Deep South, and then 99 Bottles, which was the bar with the Confederate flags, um, which just shows you that in working class circles, this isn't a topic of conversation. This is a distraction of the and by the elite, and that when people are focused on the normal things, on feeding their families, on having a beer and blowing off some steam after a day of manual labor. They're not going to sit around in struggle sessions and deconstruct any aspect of the society's ailments. They're just going to sit around and discuss what's going on in the community with the community. It just doesn't need to be that deep because it's not.
Mm. Mm.
Absolutely. My favorite and least favorite scene are the same, and it's Race to Dinner. And it's my favorite because we did it, and it's my least favorite because we did it. I mean, it was one of the
Yeah.
hardest. It was one of the hardest scenes to shoot for a variety of reasons. I mean, just the number of people, the location, all of the technical aspects of it that had to be set up, the management during it, and just the tension the entire time. And every scene is tense. Every scene is difficult to set up. But that relief that comes when you do something that's really, really difficult and you've been struggling to do it, and it's finally over, and it was a hard accomplishment, but you did it. That's kind of that moment for me.
Wow. And just share with our viewers what were the Race to Dinner folks, D'Angelo, all of them, what were they told? Why was it that they felt so free to share their views? Like what was it that they were assuming they were being filmed?
Well, I personally believe that their freedom. A lot of people when they ask, they say, basically that, like, what was the story to get them to come in and to talk. And it's, these people are they live in such a bubble, and they're so unchallenged that I don't believe that they didn't know anything. It wasn't that they were told they were doing something completely different. They were told they were going to be in a documentary about race in America, and they had full time to and due consideration of their contracts and their releases. So they weren't. It wasn't pressure. It wasn't. It was so quick, and they just didn't know what was going on. It was a whirlwind. It's just the arrogance, the fact that you're coming in and you're being told, "Hey, you're an expert. Will you just talk freely?" And you just turn on the cameras, and that's what they hate. They hate the fact that they just were allowed to spew their vitriol into the world, and all we did was tell them, "Hey, cameras on. Here's your money. Talk."
Yeah, yeah. Well, the money is also a big fact in this because at the end of the day, this really is a grift. Um, so the fact that we were participating in the grift really lowered their guard, uh, which is
Mm.
odd because most people with common sense, when someone starts flashing cash around, that's your moment to say, okay, okay. And I really just want to give all compliments to Walsh. We use all of these segments, ranging from 10 minutes to 3 minutes, just depending on what segment we're talking about here. Matt was in the room with these guys for sometimes 30 minutes up to 2 hours. And again, I want to point out, really, really, we didn't take these guys out of context. This wasn't malicious
No,
editing.
exactly.
But Matt really knew how to kind of parrot back to them exactly what they were saying. So they just felt like they were in the safest place possible. How could this man, he's agreeing with everything I say, be anything less than this, ally, this true anti-racist ally, and this you gold standard of a DEI certified expert.
Amazing. I mean, you say that, at the side of money, that should have been a warning signal. But what it indicates is that they're used to getting money, right?
Yeah.
Right, exactly. Of course they're going to pay me this much. I'm worth it, and my message is worth it. That's exactly what they think.
Sean and I had several conversations during filming of this, being like, "Hey, man, we have to really start thinking of whether or not we're going to switch sides on this. With this amount of money being tossed around, we know how to talk the talk now. Race to dinner for men is something him and I could set up pretty easily."
Oh man. Well, couldn't you also get your certified DEI instructor card too?
No,
Right, because Matt is right, didn't he?
well, with a little bit of help from the production team. I don't think Matt actually took that test. I think we all sat around at a bar and filled it out in about 15 minutes.
Certification by committee. That's what we'll call it.
Yeah.
Well, Nike, do you want to do speed round in a quick switch? Yeah.
I think it's time. So, gentlemen, in each of our podcasts, we have a section called the Speed Round where I'll present to you some individuals, ask you to pick which one you prefer and tell us why. So we're going to start with Spike Lee or 50 Cent.
Ooh.
You're definitely going first, Benyam.
I'm split on this because I especially with 50 Cent's feud with Diddy and him being really really vindicated over the past few weeks, I'm partial to say him. But I just met Spike Lee at the DNC, and he was the nicest guy on the planet. Like, shook my hand, took pictures. So I'm gonna go with Spike, just not only because I love his
films. That you were in the film. Am I racist?
God no. He would spit in my eye if he knew that much. But I'll go with Spike just because he's been a real inspiration just of the cultural impact that you can have as a black man in America.
Sure, Sean, please.
I'm also going to pick Spike because I think that Spike Lee, even though I don't agree with a lot of his viewpoints, I think that he's coming from a place of actually trying to help the culture, help not just black culture, American culture, in his way, right? And as I said, I don't necessarily agree with his approach or his ideas, but I think 50 Cent has done a lot of damage because let's not, I mean, of course we want to go to he's a producer, he's a business owner, he's an entrepreneur, and that's great, but he's an entrepreneur of a lot of degeneracy, in my opinion. His music, as much as I did enjoy it, and I can't lie and be a hypocrite to this day. I mean, gangster rap from the 90s and 2000s is like what I listen to in the gym, obviously. You know what I mean? Like, what else am I going to listen to? But I haven't been affected as negatively as a lot of young people, black and white and brown and everything else, have been affected by gangster rap and the kind of images they put out there. The fact that he was shot 9 times is not something to admire. It's a cautionary tale that usually isn't told as a cautionary tale. So even though he's respectable in certain ways, I just, it's, they say that every great fortune is built on crime. And I think that he's a good example of that.
Tucker Carlson or Joe Rogan?
Huh.
That one's pretty easy. I'm going to go with Joe. I really admire a lot of things Tucker is doing, or at least has done. His new favorite statement of "I'm just asking questions" has been really grating on me, because a lot of the questions that he's asking are pretty ridiculous and have been debunked by not only the historical but a lot of great debates over the past 100 years. So re-engaging a lot of the talk that he's talking about, especially around topics like Winston Churchill, I find really concerning and reductive and leading to a rise of a what's been dubbed the woke right, which I have a lot of serious concerns about.
I'm also not just piggybacking on everything Benyam says. I'm also going to pick Joe Rogan, but I'm going from a producer standpoint. I mean, Tucker Carlson is the best. I mean, I remember being a kid watching him on Bill Maher's former ABC series, Politically Incorrect. So I remember seeing him on there when he was rocking the bow tie. Back in those days, a young guy. So he's definitely been a very influential figure in American politics. But to me, Joe Rogan, the reason as a producer I like him more is because he pioneered digital entertainment. He was, he made podcasting legitimate. Back when I started, back in my day, when I started, saying that you were a digital producer or that you had a YouTube show was the punchline of a joke. It wasn't a real profession, you know. And there, you know, now because of figures like Joe Rogan, it is not only legitimate, it is mainstream. As Benyam once said, he's the Johnny Carson of our day. And
Wow.
to do all of that with an internet connection and some servers in your closet, come on, how can I not respect that?
Yeah,
Wow.
brilliant. We got one more, and this is one that we've been using since the beginning of the show, and it is Malcolm or Martin.
All right, well, Sean, you get to kick this one off.
Um, well, personally, I love Malcolm, and I still listen to his speeches. I just think the way he communicated was so perfect. Ultimately, I have to go with Martin because he understood something that Malcolm didn't necessarily, and or I mean, Malcolm understood, but maybe wasn't willing to do. And it's that you have to play the game in certain aspects. You have to go through the American government to get changes. That, you know, you're not going to inspire necessarily a revolution in this way that everyone's going to pick everything up and change overnight. You have to work the government. You have to understand there's people on the other side, and they have to know that you recognize them and their humanity, and not that you're just mad. You know, and as I said, I'm not reducing Malcolm to any of those things. I'm saying that, you know, the way they approached it, you have to understand you're going to come off a certain way. And this is a media age. And I think the media was still kind of, this is in the era when the Nixon Kennedy debate was just, you know, the effects of that were just being seen. Oh my gosh, how did the people who watched the debate think Kennedy won, but the people who heard it think Nixon won? And these are the beginnings of these kind of psychological arguments that go into media. And it's something I think that Martin picked up on early that maybe if Malcolm had, it would have turned out differently.
Um, yeah, I guess Sean and I have sharing a lot of similar opinions today, which I promise isn't normal. Usually, it's a fun little fight between him and I. But no, Dr. King for a slightly different reason, and that's just because he's been a better example to 21st century culture, and the legend is better used in modern day. X has been a excuse for radicals and radicalizations to bastardize the Black liberation movement in a way that is provided to be just detrimental to the Black community and progress in general. And at least the legend of King in the 21st century is that essential calling to the higher standards of American ideals that we can all take and listen and incorporate into our lives.
Wow.
Superb. Thank you, gentlemen.
Yes, excellent. Well, as we come to the close of our session, I feel like we could talk a lot longer. I mean, both of you guys are talking about inspiration, and I really love what you said about 50 Cent, why he's not your guy, and just what he represented, and particularly the message he sends to young people, which is related to our last question. As our listeners know, there's a character we often talk about, Daryl, 16-year-old Black kid who lives in forgotten USA, and Daryl is rarely hearing from the four people on this call. He's hearing the message that America systems are rigged against him. You know, his only destiny is, you know, maybe he'll play some basketball, but he's destined for a life of oppression in this country. And we'd love to hear from each of you. You know, what would you tell Daryl, 16 years old, trying to make his way, Black and a male in this society? What would you tell him?
Benyam, why don't you go first?
Okay.
Beat you to it.
Yeah. Surround yourself by people much more experienced, much smarter, much harder working than yourself, who are constantly going to raise the bar and demand the best from yourself. And anyone who is not constantly asking that of you, just get them as far away from you as humanly possible.
I would say to him that no matter if you think everyone in the world is a racist who's trying to actively harm you, or you think that you live in a world where hard work and dedication will get the results you want, no matter which you choose, you're correct. That's where it all starts, is you and your mindset. If you think that the deck is stacked, then it will be stacked. And if you think that you can work and fight and get what you want, then you're also right. And to me, you need to spend your time focused on becoming the best version of yourself And as Benyam said, surround yourself with people who also see that and will help bring it out in you. But the first person that tells you you can't, or they won't let you, or they will stop you, that is the first person that should go on your list of do not contact.
Wow. Self-fulfilling prophecies. Wow. Gentlemen, Benyam, Sean, thank you for an amazing conversation, and thank you for what you have done, what will you will continue to do. I can't even imagine the upcoming projects that you're thinking of. It'll be much harder to go undercover now, going forward. So you got to come up
Uh,
with some new disguises. But
well, we'll just
thank
make
you
Sean go
for
on camera next time around.
yeah. All right, there you go. There you go. There you
Well,
go.
to Daryl, I would piggyback on that and say we need some new blood.
All
Absolutely. So,
right.
Daryl, or anyone like Daryl, give us a call when you're ready to start finding jobs, and we'll find something for you to do.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's brilliant.
That's brilliant.
Well, and, you gentlemen are also policymakers. You're filmmakers, but you're also policymakers because, as you described, the prior film and its impact on how women are viewed and hopefully protected, and how children are protected. You are shaping policy, and so that really is a higher calling than just simply making a film. And I'm really appreciative of your work.
Yeah, and as you say, culture, policies downstream from culture. So when you make the films like you do, you change people's mindsets, their attitudes, which then hopefully creates the conditions where policymakers feel that they can now follow suit and not run away from the issue. So Sean, Benyam, Matt Walsh, the whole team, thanks for having the courage to make these films, to continue to make these films, and thank you for being guests on Invisible Men.